All right, let's talk about a word you've been hearing absolutely everywhere, inflation. But we're going to go way deeper than just, prices are going up. We're going to uncover the hidden story of how inflation is quietly shuffling the deck, creating some really unexpected winners and losers. So let's dive right in. Just think about it for a second. That number you see on the news, it's not just some abstract economic thing. No, it's a real force that's actively changing your financial reality. It hits your savings, it affects your loans, it shapes your future. So the big question we're asking is, are you on the winning team or the losing one?
Okay, so to really get a grip on this, we've got to look past that single big headline number. We need to zoom in on the prices that really hit our wallets the hardest, starting with the two biggest ones, food and housing.
So here's a super important distinction. You've got the main inflation number that tracks, pretty much everything. But then you have something called the Consumer Food Price Index, or the CFPI. Think of it like a special tracker just for your grocery bill. It zones in on the price of your daily essentials, your fruits, veggies, milk, and that gives policymakers a really clear picture of how affordable food is for all of us. And then, of course, there's the roof over your head. The Housing Price Index, or HPI, does the exact same thing but for property. Organizations like the Reserve Bank of India publish this to keep a close eye on the real estate market. It tells us just how much that dream of owning a home is changing, financially speaking.
Okay, so now we know how they measure these price changes. But honestly, the really fascinating part is the chain reaction that happens next. Let's dig into that ripple effect.
Right. This is really the heart of the matter. Inflation is not a neutral thing. It actively moves money around. It redistributes wealth. And for every single person out there feeling the pinch, you've got to believe there's someone else who's actually benefiting from the very same trend. Okay, check this out. This is maybe the biggest twist of all. If you're a borrower, say you've got a fixed-rate loan like a mortgage, inflation can actually be your best friend. Seriously. Picture this. You took out that loan years ago. Your monthly payment is locked in, right? But over time, your salary has probably gone up with inflation. So that payment, it's now a smaller and smaller chunk of your monthly income. The debt is literally getting easier to pay off. But what about the bank that lent you the money? Well, they're on the losing side of that deal. The money you're paying them back with just can't buy as much as it used to.
But that ripple effect keeps going. Think about anyone on a fixed income, like a retiree on a pension, or someone whose salary just isn't keeping up. Their spending power is just vanishing. And that money you have tucked away in a savings account, it's losing value every single day. What's worse, the wealth gap can get even wider. Why? Because assets that wealthier people tend to own, like real estate, often go up in value with inflation, while the rising cost of just living hits lower income folks the hardest. It's this massive, widespread pressure on the whole system.
So with all this going on, you might be thinking, what can anyone even do about it? And yeah, it can feel pretty overwhelming. But the good news is, economists and governments aren't just sitting on their hands. They have a whole toolbox full of powerful ways to fight back.
I absolutely love this analogy. The central bank, like the Reserve Bank of India, is kind of like a wizard controlling the flow of money. They don't just sit back and watch what happens, they actively step in, and they have a few spells, if you will, that they can cast to cool down the economy when it gets too hot.
So what's in this wizard spellbook? Well, here are three of the big ones. First, the one you always hear about, raising interest rates. Simple idea, make it more expensive to borrow money and people and businesses will spend less. Then there's something with a fancy name, open market operations, but the goal is easy. The central bank sells government bonds, and when other banks buy them, it's like taking a giant sponge and just soaking up extra cash from the system. And third, they can tell banks they have to keep more money in their vaults, increase the reserve requirements. If banks have to hold on to more cash, they have less to lend out. Pretty clever, right?
But it's not just the central bank wizard doing all the work. This is a real team effort. The government has its own set of tools, too. They can use what are called fiscal measures, which basically means they can cut their own spending or even raise taxes to reduce demand. And on the flip side, they can work on the supply side, things like finding ways to boost production or making it easier to import goods. The goal there? Get more stuff on the shelves, which naturally helps bring prices down.
But here's the thing. In the modern world, fighting inflation isn't just about reacting when things get bad. Economies have gotten a lot smarter about this. Now it's all about having a proactive game plan. It's about setting a course and actually steering the ship to get there. And that game plan has a name, inflation targeting. It's a really cool idea. Instead of just waiting for inflation to spiral out of control, the central bank basically says, okay, this is the healthy range we want to be in.
They announce that target to everyone, and then they use all those tools we talked about to keep the economy sailing right within those boundaries. It creates predictability, it creates stability, and that's good for everybody. And listen, this isn't just some textbook theory. It's real-world official policy. Back in 2016, India formally adopted this very strategy. It was a huge deal. It basically shifted the entire focus of their monetary policy to one main goal: keeping prices stable. They made it the central bank's #1 job.
So if you're going to have a target, you need a number, right? A goal to aim for. So what is that magic number that policymakers are shooting for?
4%. That's the number. With a little wiggle room of plus or minus 2%, this is the official target. And notice, the goal isn't zero inflation. It's a stable, predictable 4%.
And here's why. Think of it like a Goldilocks scenario. If inflation falls below 2%, the economy is too cold. That's a sign of weakness, and it even risks deflation, where prices actually start falling. If it goes above 6%, things are too hot. The economy is overheating, and your money is losing value way too fast. That band between 2 and 6%, that's the just right zone, the sweet spot for healthy, sustainable economic growth.
So, as you can see, controlling inflation is this delicate, continuous balancing act. We have this sophisticated playbook designed for a predictable world. But in an era of global shocks and rapid change, the question on every economist's mind is this: is the playbook we have today really enough for the economy of tomorrow?